Hello everyone and welcome back to Relevance. We've had a great morning or afternoon depending on where you are in the world. If you haven't managed to watch any of the other sessions, then just to let you know, they will all be on demand very soon, either from our website, and we'll also send an email around to all registrants as well. Now, I've really been looking forward to this session and I'm sure you have been too. Subaru are a long-standing customer of ours, and the journey that they've been on to become a data-driven organization has been pretty phenomenal. I think that historically, the primary focus in the automotive industry has been focused heavily on brand perception, rather than building an understanding and strong relationship with the end user. But as we become more and more customer-centric, we're seeing a huge shift. And we truly believe that Subaru is helping to lead the way in the automotive industry with this. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions for Jeremy. Please send them over throughout the presentation and we'll try and get to as many as we can at the end. And like always, if we don't manage to cover your question, we will answer the question shortly after the webinar has ended by email. Okay, so Jeremy, if you're ready, I will pass it over to you.
Great. Well, thanks, Jen, for the introduction, and welcome to everybody who is in attendance. As Jen mentioned, the focus of this session is a look into how Subaru has partnered with BlueVenn over the last 10 years to drive its customer experience strategy using a data-driven approach, right? And all of this is really with the goal of creating personalized and targeted communications for its prospects and customers. Subarus are, of course, known for their world-class safety, reliability, and performance, but maybe not necessarily for their cool factor or their sexiness like a Ferrari or a Porsche. And I think that BlueVenn and our focus on data can relate to that. But hopefully after this presentation, you guys will agree that the two subjects together did some pretty cool things. So I want to start out at the beginning of our relationship. Subaru was looking to centralize all the marketing for its dealerships to provide effective targeted messages to existing and potential customers using a unified database. So at the time, 10 years ago, all of the separate dealerships had responsibility for their own customer records, and there wasn't really any framework to share data across different dealers or with the central franchising. So this created pretty significant problems as cars changed ownership, were serviced at different dealerships, or people moved to different parts of the dealership network. So Subaru came to us, to BlueVenn, really hoping to unify all of their customer data and marketing strategies across the entire network of dealerships. They wanted to address their data quality problems and, again, become more personalized with their marketing, really all towards this business goal of prompting inquiries into cars, encouraging test drives, and converting interest in cars into actual sales of cars. So here's a closer look at some of the specific challenges and issues that Subaru needed to overcome. As I mentioned, their existing customer data processes really couldn't track car history across owners, or really even manage for joint ownership of a vehicle. So this resulted in a lot of wasted effort marketing to the wrong people. They also really didn't have any idea which dealerships had what kind of data. Dealerships were really on their own and were collecting and maintaining completely different types of information about customers. And again, because they weren't sharing this information, if I, for example, as a customer bought my Subaru Outback in Boston, but then moved to New York and started to get it serviced there, I would essentially be treated as a brand new, completely unknown individual to that New York dealership. And I think overall, really, their data was incomplete and inconsistent. It had accuracy issues, and it just couldn't be trusted to be used for marketing decisions. They really lacked the ability to tailor and personalize their marketing because they didn't have a true understanding of their customers and those customers' specific wants and needs. So to summarize here, kind of going back to the main focus of this session, they really weren't able to be relevant to their customers and prospects. Marketing outreach looked the same regardless of who was receiving it, and it really reduced its effectiveness. Essentially, you could say they were shooting in the dark. So in order to start to address these issues, the first thing they really needed to do was step back and focus on the root of the problem, which is that not so sexy data that I mentioned in the beginning. In Subaru's world, this was really split into two different types of data, hard data and soft data. So hard data is something that is really directly measurable and factual. So things like gender, age, geographic location, salary, those types of demographic, socioeconomic type attributes. And these things, of course, are very useful to a marketer for things like segmentation, but they don't necessarily tell the whole story. I actually saw a presentation last year where they were talking about two people who were in the exact same demographic. They were born in the same year, they were both male, they were both self-employed, they had similar income levels, they even lived in the same city, except that one of those people was Ozzy Osbourne and the other one was Prince Charles. So you can see just from that example, you're going to need two very different strategies to be relevant to those two individuals, even though they look very similar in some regards. So in Subaru's case, it was very important to, in addition to the hard data, also incorporate soft data into their strategy. Soft data is things like personal preferences, opinions, human intelligence, and feelings. And so in order to really create an emotive, relevant customer experience, Subaru needed to be able to harness this type of information and leverage it across all their touch points with their customers and prospects. So to give you another example, let's think about a father with a family of four. He has two young kids. He owns the Subaru Crosstrek, which is the compact crossover. And with that type of information, you can maybe make assumptions about what this individual's next car might be. However, if you know his true desires, his next purchase is going to be the BRZ, the coupe that is built to thrill. And with the hours of browsing this example buyer has been doing on the website, Subaru should really be aware of that information, right? So to put that into perspective, here are the actual visuals of those two models. It's pretty clear the difference here. So you can start to see how necessary it was for Subaru to be able to use all the information at their disposal to ensure their marketing was as relevant as possible at all times. So really compounding this need as well is the journey to buying a car itself. Relevance in the automotive industry is incredibly interesting because buying a car is such an experience purchase, and it's really a process that can start from when you're as young as a child, 5 years old. I remember, some of my first toys were Matchbox cars that I built tracks for and drove around on the streets of my playmat. I had my first PlayStation with Gran Turismo and Need for Speed games that I played constantly. Certainly seen my fair share of Fast and the Furious movies. Even had a poster of a Dodge Viper on my wall, and actually did a science fair project on this car in 5th grade. Unfortunately, I still haven't gotten around to buying one, but we'll see. But kind of the story that tells you, it's really pretty obvious here that a car buying experience is a long journey that we begin at an early age. That experience is also one that plays into all 5 of your senses. The roar of the engine, the smell of fresh leather, the touch of the heated seats. And it makes sense. When it's one of the most expensive purchases that you'll make in your life, you have to make sure that everything feels right. So the $1 million question from all of this becomes, How can we take such an invested and personal connection and translate it into the digital world to ensure that then we are connecting to our customers in the best way possible? So now we get into the action part of the story. What did Subaru and BlueVenn do to address this? So not to oversimplify things, but it kind of involved a couple core pieces, putting a framework in place around the governance of all Subaru's data, incorporating segmentation and customer journey management into the marketing workflow for more targeted and relevant communications, and then also figuring out ways of using all the data at Subaru's disposal to get to the root of customer wants and desires. So how do we actually go about executing on that? So with BlueVenn, we talk about our clients adhering to a closed loop marketing strategy. You start with your customers who are interacting with you through all kinds of touch points, your website, walking into a dealership, receiving mail from you, talking on the phone to representatives. All of these touch points generate data, and you need to consolidate that data together so that it's usable. At BlueVenn, we call this our single customer view process, and it really encompasses all the cleansing, deduplication, merging, enrichment, etc., that's required to achieve that single golden record of a customer. So the end result of that process is the purpose-built marketing database that can be leveraged at every stage in the marketing workflow, from analysis and segmentation, predictive modeling, feeding this segmentation into customer journeys, and managing and executing those journeys across any execution channel. All the marketing activities that are generated through these journeys are creating new data that feeds directly back into that single customer view database. So it's essentially creating that closed loop system that allows for continued iteration and refinement for marketing optimization. Finally, there's also the ability to intercept the customer journey in real time through the use of BlueVenn and Relevance real-time personalization engine, which changes the customer experience as it's happening on digital channels based on what the individual is doing. So for those of you that saw Matt's previous session, this is the portion he gave a demo of. The rest of you, I definitely encourage you to check out that recording. So you start to see kind of this closed loop strategy. This is actually Subaru's version of that. And at the core, you can see it's really the same philosophy around consolidating everything you know about customers and prospects, the data you've collected on them, their behaviors and history, and using all that information at every step of the marketing process to ensure you're being as relevant as possible in all communications. So at BlueVenn, in order to support this strategy, we create an architecture of what we call X1X, which means infinite data sources feeding into one marketing platform that connects to infinite marketing channels. So the idea is to take any data system that contains customer information and feed that into the fundamental marketing single customer view database. In Subaru's case, this data came from some of the sources that I've mentioned. The BlueVenn platform then ties into this database and connects to any channel that's used for marketing to customers. And then finally, the platform enables all the activities that go into communicating intelligently with customers so that you're using a data-driven and multi-channel strategy every step of the way. So I actually have a few examples from Subaru that I can share that showcase the types of journeys and personalization that they were able to put in place upon deployment of the unified marketing database and marketing automation platform. So here what you're looking at is an example of a triggered communication that starts a prospect down a nurture process when they request a brochure on the website. The email is encouraging registration for a test drive, and it also gives the prospect the option of managing their preferences around things like car type, preferred dealer location, and other information that Subaru can then begin to use to create a more personalized experience. So this email is something that is automatically delivered in real time based on an action from a different channel. And the goal of it is really to increase engagement and push prospects through the sales funnel. So following that initial email, you can then see how Subaru has a series of follow-up emails that they can send depending on the response they get from the prospect and the initial engagement. So this first follow-up is delivered to people who have not taken additional action since their initial brochure request. And the idea is to re-engage them and move them towards a test drive. Because the single customer view contains all customer data and the email journey is connected to that, it's able to reference test drive registrations and automatically suppress those who have signed up from getting an email that doesn't make sense to them. So that's really a big piece of what BlueVenn enables. It's that ability to manage a seamless experience across those different channels and different customer data systems. The actual content of the email that you're seeing here is variable depending on the interests and information that's been collected about the person it's going to. So somebody who spent a lot of time on the site, compared the detailed specifications of each car, should be obviously given information specific to car components. Somebody who read about press releases and awards for safety features should be served that type of content. So Subaru begin to leverage all that valuable data that's collected from their site to ensure all communications focused on things that will be compelling to that individual. So this example here is focusing on the engineering excellence and safety, and actually includes a video specifically about the symmetrical all-wheel drive system. So you can see how detailed and exact the messaging is here for somebody who this is going to be important to. And here's a look at a third email in that specific series. So as I alluded to earlier, every email that Subaru sends generates data that is being returned back to the single customer view related to if it was opened, clicked through, converted to a test drive, and so on. So that allows journeys like this to really take many possible paths depending on if the contact and how the contact has responded to any of the outreach. In this case, this specific example, again, we are encouraging a test drive for individuals who have so far not yet been responsive to that. And the content here is continuing to drill into the specific needs and motivations of this individual. This one is around Subaru's unique boxer engine. So you start to see the possibilities that have been opened up for Subaru, where previously they had no capability to personalize their marketing, right? They lacked that relevance. They now have consolidated every piece of information they have about an individual and are able to use that within every step of the customer experience. So we now kind of have talked through what they did. Let's take a look at the impact it actually had on their business. So those example emails I showed you were just a few of several 100,000 personalized emails that they are able to deliver each month, with the goals of increasing engagement, keeping themselves at the front of mind of potential customers, and continue to push people towards a test drive to get them closer to a sale. So that was a huge outcome, the ability to really automate and manage an effort like that. Another valuable outcome was the increased visibility they had into customer satisfaction at every stage in the buying cycle. So they actually introduced what they call a CSI program that triggered surveys at brochure requests, at test drives, and sales. Because they now had their customer data under control, they were able to attach the results of these surveys and net promoter scores to individual customers, so then they could manage them as appropriate. But they were also aggregating this information up to the dealer level to provide insight into marketing activities that were working well for each dealer. In addition to that direct customer feedback, the marketing response data also fed back to the single customer view was extremely insightful for them. It gave Subaru direct evidence into the effectiveness of what was going on by measuring factors such as opens, clicks, resulting web sessions, test drives, and sales for essentially every marketing initiative it implemented. So they no longer really had to rely on anecdotal reports from the dealerships, and they were actually able to use this hard data as early indications of whether or not a marketing campaign is working. So this goes back to what I discussed around a closed loop, where Subaru was able to use this marketing data that they're getting back to continue to iterate on and improve future marketing activities. We talked about the personalization aspect with the emails, but because they were personalizing based on their full understanding of the customer, Subaru was able to come up with all kinds of different levers that they could pull to be as relevant as possible in their communications. So I showed you the email examples, personalizing different types of content, but dealers also now had the ability to provide things like variable pricing, service offerings, accessories, and so on in order to really reach that goal of hitting the right person with the right message. And finally, wanted to share some of the actual kind of quantifiable business results that they saw. So as a result of implementing this personalization strategy with BlueVenn and becoming more relevant to their customers, Subaru was able to more than triple the number of initial inquiries that they were able to then move to the test drive stage. And this is really huge for them. So we talked about the sensory experience of buying a car. For Subaru, getting people to that test drive stage was incredibly important, and this really helped them do that. Beyond that, they also boosted the number of test drives that actually led to sales by 3 times. So they had way more people doing test drives, and then those people, of those people doing test drives, they dramatically increased the conversion of those. So a lot of this, again, could be attributed to the fact that when people showed up for a test drive, the dealers knew way more about them, their needs and motivations, and could use this to ensure the in-person experience was also as relevant as possible. So overall, you can see how really everything that we've talked about here had a direct impact on Subaru's top line revenue. They were able to become much more relevant to their prospects and customers. This increased their marketing effectiveness and ultimately led to significant increases in sales. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Jen, I'll pass back to you for any questions that might have come through or concluding remarks.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. Yes, we have had some questions through. I've picked out some I'm going to fire over to you now if you're ready.
Yep.
Great, okay. So the first one that came through was, I've read some reports that suggest consumers can consider personalization creepy. How do we avoid coming off that way to our customers while still making sure we are relevant to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's absolutely a very valid concern. You think about things like, people don't want to feel like they're part of a surveillance state that's tracking their every move, right? So to answer that, I think it comes down to thinking about if you are providing something of value to the customer, if you're actually being helpful to them, or if you as a marketer are really only helping yourself through these actions. So actually in the previous session, Matt talked about personalizing in the right way and being transparent with your customers. He mentioned this concept of being overt about data collection and covert about personalization. But I also think, with any marketing technology, really, there's the opportunity to abuse it. I used to work in social media insights, and prospects and clients would ask us, oh, can I search for my competitor's name and find all the people that were complaining about that company and then message those people on Twitter, to check out my own products. And, technically, yes, you could do that, but it's not going to be received well by those people. And same thing with email. I'm sure there's plenty of companies, there definitely are plenty of companies that abuse email and constantly spam people, and that elicits a negative reaction from consumers. But that doesn't mean email isn't a valuable marketing tool when used correctly. So I think, a lot of times personalization even can be very simple to make a big difference. If somebody's researching ski trips on my travel site, it's completely logical for the banner of my site to be a ski mountain the next time they visit, as opposed to a beach scene. So I really view it as a blank slate and an opportunity to, deliver to the customer exactly what they want, and that should be something that, they're getting value from.
Yep, couldn't agree more, Jeremy. So the next one that we're going to cover was we are interested in combining some of the rich web behavior data available to us with our other customer data, much like how you're describing Subaru doing. The problem is we don't know who the large majority of our website visitors are. Are there ways to overcome this? Which is really relevant, excuse the pun, question, because I'm sure many people are finding this.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very, very common challenge that we hear. And I think there's a couple of ways that we deal with this. The way that all that rich web behavior data is typically captured is through a cookie or some other digital identifier that's tied to the user's device. And so one of the things that BlueVenn does is leverages identity resolution partners to actually match those unknown identifiers to identifiable information like name and address, email, etc. So in doing that, we can then match these previously anonymous users to known individuals in the single customer view database, and then that's where you're able to start to take advantage of the benefits of merging online and offline data, like we saw in the Subaru example. I think there's also ways of encouraging individuals to authenticate themselves on your website and give you information about themselves. So, things like sign up with your name and email to get an offer or piece of content. We see a lot of people, providing extra benefits for those who are registered with an account. So there's a ton of strategies that you can also employ, to try to capture this information, but also, specific technological capabilities that BlueVenn supports to also help you accomplish this.
Perfect. Thank you so much for presenting today, Jeremy. And that brings us to the end of our final session at Relevance. It's been fantastic to hear from all of our marketing technology experts today, and I hope we've helped guide you on your journey to delivering true one-to-one personalization and becoming a data-driven organization. So if you'd like to book in a one-to-one demonstration of anything you've seen today, so Blue Relevance, or you'd like to find out more about BlueVenn, the BlueVenn customer data platform, and how you can unify not only your online but offline data, then just head to our site, BlueVenn.com, and you can request a demonstration there. We also have tons of great ebooks under the resources section on the website, which cover topics like single customer view, real-time marketing, and also predictive analytics. Also, as a side note, just before we go, we're very proud to be Magento partners, and we'll actually be heading to their Imagine event on the 23rd to the 25th of April in Vegas. So if you're planning on attending, make sure you keep an eye out for us. Okay, so just as a last reminder before we leave you, all sessions will be available on demand via our website shortly, and you'll get an email notification when they're ready to be viewed. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you found the last 3 sessions beneficial, and we hope to be speaking with you soon. Goodbye.